Okay.
Hi, welcome. It's February 18th, 2019, and this is our latest episode of Public Emily No.1. I'd like to introduce my friend, Susan McCarty. I always call you Susan because that's what it always said about above your building in Foothill. But I know Bob always tells me to call you Susie, so you'll have to tell me which you prefer.
My parents named me Susan, so I always have liked Susan, but somehow it morphed into Susie when I opened the modeling agency.
Susie is a great modeling name, though.
It was, and I think that's where it all happened. It's the Utah Susie.
Mm-hmm. Utah Susie, even better.
Well, welcome, and Bill Lee is here as my trusty sidekick on the show today. So, Susan McCarty, welcome. Tell us about yourself. I don't really have a plan, so you get to tell us about who you are and who you are to especially Salt Lake City in Utah.
Well, I think I've really morphed over the years. The person that I actually started the modeling and acting agency in, I was 37 years old, and I think it was probably 1974. So we're in our 45th year, and it has been a great journey. It's been a roller coaster ride, but it's been, comes from my heart, very heartfelt. It was never, one time I said, I'd just like to have my own business so I could maybe make $200 a month of my own money. Because at the time, I was married to Ray McCarty, who is a fabulous, incredible Utah artist, and he passed away this last year. And we had a beer joint up in Emigration Canyon, beer and hamburgers, when we moved from Las Vegas. And so my girls and I, we were waiting on the tables. It was during the hippie years and what have you. And that was a journey also. But during that time, right towards the end, I opened up my agency because some friends called and wanted to hire some talent for background work. They said, isn't there an agency or anything where we can find people? And because I'm living in New York and Los Angeles and Las Vegas, I was familiar with agencies, and I thought, there's not an agency in Salt Lake City. I bet I could do that. So, like I say, I started 1974, and my first post for talent happened to be in McCarty Cafe up Emigration Canyon.
Oh, so the cafe was called McCarty's Cafe.
McCarty's Cafe.
Was that just up from Ruth's Diner where the Sun and the Moon Cafe was? Was that your original cafe?
It was the Sun and the Moon. It was several. We had it from 1970 to 1975. And actually, we had bought Ruth's Cafe in 1974. And Ruth was a character. Oh, my God. She's way into politics and all the funny stories about her. Even in the winter, she'd be in a sundress with her cigarette hanging out of the corner of her mouth with a little grill. And she had a little Chihuahua dog she carried under one arm. And my girls and I, we would laugh about that she would take the hamburger patties and, pat them in her hand and then put them under her arm and flatten them out.
Oh, my gosh.
And then put them on the grill. But she
man.
was a character, and her name was Ruth. And then Ruth Ashley owned the cafe, and we turned into McCarty's. And Ruth Ashley actually started in 1927. But she and the other Ruth at Ruth's Diner were arch enemies and competitors.
So it was actually the Ruth versus Ruth Cafe.
It was the Ruth versus Ruth, yeah. So anyway, but that's where I got started, and a couple of friends that wanted some background people for TV commercials. And I said, I could do that.
So before you opened McCarty's, were you a model?
I was.
Oh, wow.
But I was a lot more things than that. First off, I was a mother.
Oh.
Two incredible children. I was a real tomboy. I grew up on a farm. I was into sports. Tennis. I was really quite good at tennis. I was a state champion, and golf, you name it, basketball, girls softball, all of that.
Wow.
And so life, I think when I look back, I've had different lives. I've had many, 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 many lives.
So when you did somebody discover you, or did you go out and put yourself out there to be discovered? How was that done?
My grandmother discovered me.
Really? What's the story behind that?
She raised us with my grandfather on the farm during World War II, and she loved beautiful things, and she was from Holland, and they were living in Hawaii when Pearl Harbor was bombed. Wow. And my grandfather worked at Pearl Harbor. And so to cut to the chase, they had grandchildren back here in Utah, and they bought a farm, and we were raised. But my grandmother, who worked at Liberty House in Hawaii, got a job at Keith O'Brien's downtown before S&H Green Stamps, when it was a fabulous, fabulous department store next to Arbax. And she asked me if I wanted to do a little modeling for Simplicity magazine. Or no, Simplicity Patterns.
Simplicity Patterns. What is Simplicity Patterns?
Yeah.
I think, don't they make dresses you could cut out and you could cut the
they would
dress
give
yourself?
You the pattern, and then you'd lay the pattern down on top of the fabric. It was sort of like a puzzle.
My mom liked to do that with Spiegel, I think.
It was like a puzzle, for
Yeah.
sure.
So this department store that you were talking about, was that near ZCMI?
It was next door to Arbax, down on Broadway, on 3rd South and State. It was between Main and State on Broadway, which is 300 South.
Okay. I think that's like a Charles Schwab building
this
or something
way
now.
before you were born.
When you did the model for the patterns, you were an advertising model, in other words?
Yeah, I was like 15
print?
years old, and I was wearing the dresses or whatever that was made from the Simplicity Patterns. And I thought, this is fun. And then there was a store called the Salt Lake Knit, and in the bottom of the Salt Lake Knit was a place called, oh my gosh, what was it? It'll come to me. But anyway, a fellow by the name of Chet Smith ran the bottom shop, and his mom and dad owned, and they were descendants of Mormon pioneers and what have you. But Chet was just a wild, crazy guy. And
you mean he would drink coffee and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No. He was into all the hard stuff, believe me.
Okay.
But anyway, he got fired, and he went to work for Keith O'Brien's. And then by that time, my grandmother had also gotten me a job at Keith O'Brien's. I was running the elevator, and then I got moved into display, and Chet came into display. And Chet was a display genius, and he started doing fashion shows. And so he had me help him, and I learned so much from him. He was an absolute mentor to me. And so that's where it all began.
So what is one of the most memorable things he taught you about live runway? I'm sorry, would it be rude of me to ask about what year that was? It sounds like it might have been a
because
different era.
Age and all that stuff is no big thing to me. As long as I feel good.
Good.
And I feel young.
Good.
And I feel like I have a great life, But it was back in probably the 50s.
Okay. So was it taboo for a young lady to be a model then, or was it welcomed?
Well, whatever your idea of modeling is, it was in Salt Lake City. It was patterns. It was very conservative. But Chet Smith was the total opposite of. He was a wild, crazy artist. He was so much fun to be around. He opened up a whole different world to me that, he would slick his hair back. He would walk down the street with no shirt on, in his silk pants and his patent leather shoes.
Whoa.
And this was in the 50s.
Whoa, I bet that guy really looked good.
And I spent a lot of time around him, and he taught me so much about, number one, be yourself.
Number one, be yourself. I like that.
Yeah, be yourself. Chase your childhood dreams. He was a character.
So what was the next move that you, the next progressive step you took after that? What?
Well, I was doing little modeling, and I got married to Lee Grosscup, who was first a draft choice for the New York Giants, but I'd been doing some modeling for ZCMI, little $5 shows, what have you. Joyce Gorder, who ran the fashion department at the time. But the big step for me was moving to New York City.
Oh, I didn't know you lived in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, because of Lee being the first draft choice for the New York Giants, he was also All-American at the University of Utah. And he was the furthest thing from a football player. He was lean and this gorgeous body, beautiful face, really smart. He graduated in English. He was an English major. But anyway, when we moved to New York, my daughter Stephanie was born in New York. But first he's from Santa Monica. And so Kima, my first daughter, was born in Santa Monica, and then Stephanie was born in New York City. And so spent 4 years in New York City. And so all of Broadway shows, Lee was way into Broadway shows. He could sing just about every major Broadway show, every song from each one of them. But the people that I met, the sports figures, actors, being with the Giants, just all the doors that had opened to me, the museums, the art, things that I'd never been exposed to, diversity.
Ooh, that's a great thing to say.
I love Manhattan because people from all over the world and every race all live there, and they get along.
That's far from the farm. Where did you say the farm was where you were born?
Riverton, Utah.
In Riverton, yeah.
No, I wasn't born there. I was born.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was 15 when she got pregnant with me, and it was real taboo. Her mom, their last name was Taylor. Her mom was good Mormon, so my grandmother that was born in Holland took my mother and my father to Sacramento, California, and I was born in Sacramento, and I was there for almost 4 years before I moved back here, but this has been home to me.
What was your last name then?
Hancock.
Hancock,
okay. Yeah, another good Mormon name.
Yes.
Taylor and Hancock.
Oh, good constitutional name, too.
I didn't know either of those names were LDS. I just figured that Taylor meant you were somebody that stitched something, and I don't know what a Hancock is.
Some ancestor did it.
Yeah.
Some ancestor stitched things, I guess,
But growing up on the farm, my grandparents, who were very liberal, would send us all to Sunday school so they could stay home and smoke their cigarettes and have their cups of coffee.
Now, were they Mormon then, or were they? I guess born in Riverton.
They were. My grandmother, as in her 80s and everything, and late 70s, got back with the Mormon Church. She was, embraced that towards the end of her life. So
when you were living in New York, was it ever difficult to be a young aspiring woman and is fashion and talent the right way to say your field?
Oh, not at all.
Oh,
not at all.
So
one of the things I've never had any problem with, people say, because like opening a business here in Salt Lake, a modeling business, and having my original office, not the very first one, but the first 13 years was in the Hilton Hotel. So you can imagine the stories that would go around. But the men in this market of Salt Lake City, the advertisers, people that I worked with, were always helpful and great. And I learned early on with a lot of them, if you just say to them, you know what, I need your help. It just opened the door, and the city has been extremely supportive. Not that we didn't have problems, because I did a cabaret show in the Hilton Hotel for almost 13 years, and we'd have the Vice Squad, and, we'd have people complaining and putting nasty, mean notes on the door of our office in the lower lobby of the Hilton Hotel. But I've always... things like that would never stop me.
Was it just too much ankle, basically?
Pardon?
Just too much ankle, basically, then?
too much ankle.
Ankle. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
I think
yeah.
he means like you weren't supposed to show your ankles or
Oh.
something, right?
No.
Hey, we were the first ones to do the bra ads in
Oh.
ZCMI.
Oh boy.
Wait,
okay.
so did they not use
You
to
cannot
advertise
believe
bras?
I art directed the most incredible ads in Utah Holiday magazine, which was before Salt Lake City magazine. Girls in swimsuits, bikinis, middle of the winter, up in trees, and I just had so much fun. I mean, the fashion business really hit Salt Lake City with a very, very, very successful. And I was very thankful to ZCMI because they were one of our first customers. Sharon Loya was the copywriter for ZCMI, and everything was illustrated. All of the newspaper advertising was illustrated. There was no photography. A friend of mine, Steve Wada, was a photographer and writer for the Salt Lake Tribune, but he loved photographing beautiful women. And I had started teaching some modeling classes. Anyway, we got together. Sharon, she was with CCMI, Stephen with the Salt Lake Tribune, and me just sort of finding my way. And we got CCMI to give us $150, and Stephen and I split that, and Sharon was on payroll, and we did the first photographic ads and presented them to ZCMI. So for about 5 months, we were doing full page ZCMI. I was doing the models' hair, makeup. Sharon's doing all the copy. Stephen doing the photography, who, by the way, became one of the top Playboy photographers ever. And he was right up there when Hugh Hefner died. I mean, he did covers, he did centerfolds. He was known for his lighting. I mean, just amazing. And when he decided he didn't want to do fashion in Salt Lake anymore, he wanted to submit photos to Playboy. And I was the one who helped him, get the models. I mean, they were beautiful nudes. I mean, they were like artwork. They were gorgeous. And anyway, Playboy hired him.
Wow, that is so fascinating.
Yeah.
So when I have a question, how has the image of beauty has certainly changed in the modern age.
Wow.
I feel as though, I obviously, my mother was, she was a really beautiful woman, and she was very conservative. She dressed very conservatively, but she was considered to be very cutting edge in her fashion. How do you feel about the trends changing in fashion? What did they look like then? When in the height of your career, what would you say like a popular look was for either a man or a young woman? Or
Well, it was all very conservative in the 50s, and but the hippie movement hit in the 60s, and there was a huge liberation in dress and love, everything. Music, you name it. And so when we started, I worked for lingerie stores, not worked for them, but I did their ads, with models and lingerie and what have you. Like I said, the first bra ad for ZCMI, they had members of the church complaining about it and what have you. But anyway, it went from that very conservative to the hippies. I mean, that's drastic.
Yeah.
That is a big change. Not that everybody braced it, but it had a huge movement on the young, and the young grow up, right? So, we had, the fashion, the period of fashion from the time that I have been, two periods. One was the big shoulders in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I wasn't too fond of that, but there was still all that beautiful A-line to the body, beauty,
You're looking at women like that and thinking, they would make great football paper babies, or something like that.
Absolutely. And then the other one that I have found, I get it, I understand it, I do it, but I love to dress up. Nobody dresses up anymore.
I love
I
dressing
think
up.
right now we are clones that when it comes to dress, it's Levi's, T-shirts, tennis shoes, shorts, sweatshirts, sweat clothes. I mean, think about it. And I mean, you see it at weddings, you see it at funerals. You hardly ever, unless it's New Year's Eve or something, that people dress up. I take my beautiful clothes that I had from, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and I mow my lawn in my sequin dresses.
That's fantastic. I love dressing up. I mean, for me, again, I grew up in a home where there was basically two looks. There was you're getting ready to go to bed or do stuff around the house, or you're getting ready to go out. And that was something that I find that I try to do as my beauty. My mother always used to say, "One moment, Dick, I'll be right down. I have to have a squirt of perfume." And, for me, that's just what I do. And now that I'm living back home at my parents' house, like I replicate those beauty standards, which I learned from my mother. And Bill always likes to tease me because I don't wash my face with soap as a specific
I don't
beauty.
either.
I don't know.
Have.
Yeah, it's very odd. I just grew up with my mom. She never put soap on her face. And so it's these beautiful little beauty things that our mothers teach us that we carry on. Even I bet you even have beauty things you carried on, Bill, like this pink shirt today.
I know.
yeah.
I was going to mention
Like
I like your pink shirt.
Well, I usually like to exfoliate with ground glass on my face. It works pretty well.
Bill's mother was really into looking nice when she went out, and her favorite color was pink.
Well, I remember the first time I saw you, Emily.
You do?
are a dynamo. It was at a party in your backyard. And you were going here and there and directing this and directing that and meeting and greeting, and you were everywhere. And I thought, that girl has a lot of energy. And it was such a fun party.
Oh, thanks. So and that's kind of the focus of my show is like this. I wanted I always found that if I host a backyard party, I should be able to know every guest that's there. The particular party you were at, we had 410 people.
Yeah,
and I had
great party.
I had to take time to say hi to each and every one of them. But moreover, I want to take the time to actually record and have interviews with all those people because they're fascinating people. And for 400 people to get together in one backyard in Salt Lake City and get along and make friends, it was so awesome.
It was great.
And I think it gave the feeling of everybody being together, which I think you've probably seen a lot of in your industry is that probably the more people work together, the more sensible they could be.
Right.
For instance, it shouldn't have been too taboo to just advertise undergarments for a woman. I don't understand why
It
was
happened eventually.
Why was it so controversial? Just because it would show a woman's shape, or what?
I don't know. Bare skin. There's just something about bare skin.
Some tradition lasting from a long time ago. I don't know. It's sort of a tradition not to show those things.
So be modesty. That's I'm not too.
I mean,
fond of the word
it's up there.
modesty.
It's up there with my question. Why did everyone wear hats back then?
It was the fashion.
Oh, well,
why does everybody wear Levi's?
Yeah.
So back in the 50s, you feel like a lot of people wore hats.
Oh
Bill?
yeah.
And the men. You never saw a man downtown without a hat on.
If you're outside, you had every restaurant had hat racks. You put your
and
hat
not
in a
ball
rack.
caps. Not ball caps.
I was just going to say they were probably like a proper little Newsies style hat or something like
things
that.
The things that had the rim, around. Yeah.
Regular
Well, for
man's
me,
hat.
when I wear my hat, which I just got myself my first felt writing hat, I like it because it doesn't smash my hair in the day. So you can actually make the little snowflakes come on your head.
But that's a lot more modern than the hats we're talking about, the 50s men's hats.
The hats,
40s and 30s.
a lot of I used to love to wear hats, but I loved the ones with the veils. Oh my God, they're so beautiful.
That's awesome.
Oh, you look like Salome then, huh?
Yeah, I love.
So I have a question because obviously I grew up in the Harvard Yale Foothill area of Salt Lake City, and we used to walk up to Foothill, and I was always see your shop, McCarty Salon. And what went on there? What was in that place? Was that...
Well, we were up on the second floor, but we had the booking agency for actors, voiceover, models, and we also had the salon. And I got into the salon business because my really wonderful, dynamic, talented friend, Ben Burns, he met me when I was just starting, and he said, "Come on, I'm going to show you where we're going to move to." And he grabbed my hand. We walked over to the old Hilton Hotel on 500 South, and the basement was pretty much empty except for the liquor store and a couple of bathrooms. They're big bays that they were renting out. So we started there, but Ben had the best salon. He was amazing, talented stylist, and he ended up taking his life. And the salon sat empty. They locked the door for, I would say 4 or 5 months. And I thought, this is ridiculous, because my office was right kitty corner down in the lower lobby. So I went to the Pearsons, who were great to work for, wonderful. They owned the hotel. I said, you know what? I could run that salon. So they... it was open key, ready to go. We just had to go in, clean up, whatever. And that's how I got into the salon business. We had 17 stylists at one time working for us in the Hilton Hotel. And by the time I left the hotel is when the Pearsons were selling the hotel. I wanted to get out of the basement, lower lobby. I wanted to look out a window and what have you. And at that time, we had the salon. We did all the shows in the room at the bottom. We had taken over most of the south side of the floor with our offices, and it was amazing. I went from my $200 a month to creating a really fabulous business, which we then moved up to Foothill. And we've been in Foothill now for 30-something years.
And is there any recession on talent coming to your agency? Is there folks still wanting to be involved in that at a pretty
I think because
popular
of
rate?
the ZCMI, and my other first client was Grizzly Adams.
Well, who's Grizzly Adams?
It was a fabulous TV show series
called
called Grizzly Adams.
Nature show, yeah.
It was a major hit. And plus we did, Touched by an Angel and all of those series and what have you. And when they were doing movies of the week, we were so busy. And actually, in newspaper print, fashion print, we were 5th in the nation, the amount of work that we put out. I mean, all the stores that we did, all the... like Grand Central, they were a huge client, and they would do the big inserts that you get in every Sunday paper and what have you. But, Castleton's and Great Garb and Keith Warshaw. I'm forgetting. Of course, CCMI was, huge. And I also, because the cabaret shows, I was probably doing 5 or 6, at least, maybe more fashion shows every week. I was doing all the mall shows. I did the opening show for the Olympics. I did the children's centers at Abravanel Hall, big shows up at Kingsbury Hall, major, with a good budget, not just little frumpy, sort of silly runway shows, but big major shows. So, and Salt Lake doesn't have any of that anymore. That's another thing. Our market has changed because all of our home stores sold out, and then all the big stores with Nordstrom's. And in fact, when all of those came in, I did their opening shows for them. But then it's, it all moved in-house and what have you. But the everything changed when we lost our home stores as far as the print work and the fashion show work. So talk about changing. My business has made drastic changes from nothing to just being so busy you can hardly, and now most of it is online as far as fashion. You know, I really miss the shows, though. The fashion shows were so much fun to do.
I think I need to have a backyard fashion show.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it's a great setting, but I'm sure we could find a more proper place to do so.
You did have a toga show one time.
I did have a toga party. It's
We
not
used
quite
to
as
do them-
fashionable.
We used to do them for Ballet West, you know, for the Heart, for all the different fundraisers. I mean, they were huge, huge shows. So, and our models, I had Eileen Ford came here, Wilhelmina came here. What's his name that had Elite? They all came here and scouted models. And Eileen, one time when she was here, she took 3 of my models. So we were on the map. We really,
wait, when you say took, do you mean they went over to
They
her
went-
agency?
yeah,
Okay, so
they,
that's a not good kind of take.
Well, it was great, you know,
Oh.
because it took these girls that were modeling in Salt Lake to New York.
Well, okay.
Wow.
But did
They'd
your
come in and
agency
scout.
Did your agency make anything off of that, or was it?
Pardon?
Did your agency make a finder's
Oh
fee
yeah,
on that?
we would keep. We'd be called the mother agency.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
that's
and
good.
so you'd get a
All right.
percentage.
So did your children and your husband Lee, were they involved in fashion at all?
My second husband, Ray McCarty, was.
Okay.
Lee did a lot of radio work. He was with ABC for 17 years as a broadcaster in football. He still, I think this year, he's been with Cal State radio forever, too. And Ray McCarty, like I say, is... If you go to raymccartyart.com, you'll see some of the greatest art. But he built my first runway, and he was one of my models. And my children. My daughter Kima started modeling when she was 14. And she did a lot. She was like 5'9", 5'10". I mean, the photographers loved her. We started off with Steve Wada and Robert Brantley were the only 2 photographers. Well, it got to the point where there were probably 6, 7, 8 really good fashion photographers. There was so much work here.
Wow. Yeah. So your other daughter, did she become so is Kima still a model as well? Or?
No. Kima is, she is my wild child. And she lives on 37 acres of wilderness.
Whoa.
And she's up there with the bears and the cougars.
Where's that?
She's in the San Juan Mountains in Colorado.
Okay.
And she is the mother of my 4 grandchildren. And we were in Hawaii when Genevieve, my eldest, was born, and my grandson, my first grandson, Gabriel, and she did underwater births at home, natural births. And
Whoa.
I was there helping deliver my grandchildren.
Oh, great. So you can deliver babies on top of the rest of your skill set?
Well, she can.
You're
I'll
unstoppable,
tell you,
woman.
She can. One time when Gabe was born, she had to, she was in the birthing tank, and she had to break her own water. The midwife wasn't there yet. And the father was out surfing, but he made it. It was she and I until Gabriel's head crowned.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have just been
Yeah, those were the real shows.
that sounds like such
Yeah.
an important moment in life to share. Like you can just see the picture, the image of the 3 generations together.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
I mean, it was amazing. And then Kiva and Kamira were all water babies at home. Yeah. So 4 grandchildren.
That's fantastic.
But she's a musician. She's a writer. She's multi-talented. Yeah, she's a free spirit.
So if how is fashion today? Like, what are you involved on hands-on at McCarty? Are you
Well, the main
private-
thing right now with most of the work we do is online.
Okay.
But you'd be surprised how many online are people that have, develop and create here in Utah and go online with their stuff.
their whole would you say
And,
that's
well,
a fashion wardrobe or
Well, it's just
Sort
like, when you go online to buy shoes, it's the same thing with clothing.
wow.
So they hire a lot of models. But then there's still, beauty, makeup, skincare, all that, but there's just not the fashion shows and the newspaper ads. That's what's sad.
It's such a bummer. So I guess, we'll kind of be narrowing down towards the end of our interview here, but I want to take the time to say thank you for becoming my friend and letting me interview you on the show today. I just think you're fascinating, and I love that you're a woman and progressive, and that, even though I most of my life, most everybody knew who you were, I always knew you from like those gold letters up at Foothill. And I just thought, someday I want to meet that woman.
And here we are, friends.
I know. And then we met at my backyard party. And then I actually think we worked down doing something to help at Neil O'Donnell, I think, together. And that was really nice. Yeah. But I want to thank you for being here. And I don't, Bill, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's it. I thought of another nice name for you. Now, you said it was, you sometimes are known as Utah Susie or Susie Utah. Which was that?
Well, I think because there was a very famous model whose name was Susie when I started. Mm-hmm. And it just morphed into the models and people calling me Susie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could call yourself Utah Susan now.
Utah Susan.
Yes.
I kind of like that.
I kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Hey,
I just want to say just one more thing, which one of the things I love about you, that you have to know what your self-worth is, and you have to have confidence, and that no matter what anybody has to say about you, good or bad, if you have a childhood dream, go for it. And I also really believe in having control. I think sometimes when people lose their temper, they lose their power. And learning to get along and negotiate and being kind is so important. And I've had a great life. I plan on having some more. So here's to more, Emily.
Yes, here's to more. And maybe we should have a proper fashion show party. I'm turning 37 in a couple weeks.
All right.
So I'll be
when you
planning.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I was 37 when I started my agency.
I know. That was my favorite part of this interview, because I had just said to a girlfriend yesterday, I said, do you think that I can make any life changes now at 36? And her dad looked at me, Richard Friend. He's a famous photographer from Salt Lake. And he says, hell, are you kidding? I had done it at least 3 times changing around at 36. I was like, okay, well, this will probably work out. I could probably.
Absolutely. Never doubt it. Never doubt it.
I'm glad to know that I still have growth ahead of me. So thank you for being here. And thanks for being here, Bill. And thanks to Man vs. Music and
Thank you
Greg
both.
for doing audio today. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Okay.